Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, not joined by my co-host for this episode, but the title of today's episode is Football Tetris, and just talking about how the draft and how players kind of fit with teams and other things like that. But to be able to join me and give some really good insight is great friend of this show, former Redskins wide receiver, Mr. Anthony Armstrong. Thank you for blessing me on this Sunday afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Yesterday was my birthday. I
Oh, happy
was
birthday,
emceeing
man.
a gala. Thank you very much. I'm 42 now. Don't even look it. I got I
Not
got
at all.
carded. I got carded for getting some windshield wiper fluid. All right. You have to be 18 to get it. So I'm like, damn, wonder like they think I'm supposed to be in somebody's school at the moment, but that's good. You know what I mean? I'm staying as chill as I can, but life is stressful, but I do enjoy it. I'm glad to be here joining you.
You don't look like life is stressful at all for you, Anthony, but I'm sure that it is because, like you said, you do not look 42, man. But belated happy birthday to you, of course. But I wanted to ask you to start this off. You were an undrafted free agent. You worked really hard in the Arena League to be able to get your shot in the NFL. Obviously, you got that with Washington and made the most of it. But, like, from an organizational perspective, Anthony, what does what are teams like? What traits do you look for in a undrafted free agent? Is it like physical traits, or do you think it's more of like mental?
There's a couple of things that I think that you can see when you're looking at undrafted free agents because a lot of times there's going to be there's something that has kept them out of the limelight, out of the big stages. I mean, a lot of times it'll be a behavioral thing,
Mm.
right? It'll be somebody just continues to have some bad breaks, and then they have a lot of talent, a lot of physical trait, but they're just not in a good position to really get drafted. So that's one way you could look at it, but going that undrafted route, man, you have to have a different mindset. I think that's a person that is likely going to make up your practice squad. You're going to make up your special teams. You got to have a certain feel about you because you cannot fill your roster with 53 QB1s. Obviously we don't have 53 of those, but you're
Right,
not going to have 53 superstars.
right.
Okay, like let's be real. You don't get the best player from every college, right? Why are there players like myself that come from a D2 that get in there? Because we got a drive, we got a dog about us. You know what I mean? We got a place that we want to be in, and we're willing to work to get there. So when you find a player that has those type of mentality, that type of trait, you can see some of those things on tape. But they do also look for that skill to flash, right? They're like, man, look, I got a guy that every now and again he splashes, but his team gets beat 97-7, but he scores the seven, right? Like it's that type of a thing. And when you have an organization that trusts their scouts to go out and find players and scouts that are willing to actually do the work and not just look at what the top analysts say are the top people to look at like that frankly I think that's lazy and easy, but if you're able to go and really take the time and find some hidden talent, there's a lot of good players that you get out of an undrafted pool, and frankly they have something to prove rather than feeling like they already made it with a big old bank account.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's just like a life lesson altogether. I'm sure that's something you probably use in your motivational speeches that you're giving now, of course. But it's just the drive to do more and that to do what you're not being asked currently, but you can be able to provide. And that drive is something nature versus nurture, as they say in Wedding Crashers. But my next question for you: the wide receiver room. What do we have in the wide receiver room currently, and what do we need, Anthony?
Man, I think what you have, I'll start with what you have is a lot of playmakers and a lot of, I'll say question marks, but I'll use it in a sense of
Okay.
how are you going to use these players? How is this going to unfurl? How is it going to open up as spring is here and the plants are sprouting out? How are you going to roll this offense out on the field? Because
Mm.
Debo Samuel is a very unique player. And I knew that we all knew you needed a wide receiver too, somebody that was going to take the pressure off of Terry McLaurin. And Debo can do that. Now, I've always called for size, as in like height and speed, deep, continuous down the field speed. If you could have gotten that from one player, that would have been great. But Devo brings a different attribute that I think that it checks a couple other boxes where you get the physicality, a guy that's going to get down there, he's going to block a safety, he's got an attitude about him. I was looking forward to, I'm looking forward for the games against Philly because Debo is the dog you need on offense
Mm.
that you got on defense from Marshawn Lattimore. You understand?
Yeah.
So That he checks that box for me. He checks the box of playmaker in how many different ways you're going to be able to get him the ball. And I think one thing that is going to be interesting to see is how it affects Terry McLaurin, because I think Terry is going to get to play it more of a true X receiver, getting down the field. He may end up emerging as more of that deep threat and get some more big plays that way. So the way this thing can roll out is going to be really interesting. Now, what are you missing? I still think you are missing that consistent deep threat. You saw what De'Ami Brown was able to do, and congratulations on him to go out there and get himself another deal somewhere else. But you're missing that,
Mhm.
right? But with some of these trades now, 29 looks really interesting and it opens up a lot of players. So I got to go back and do some mock drafts because I had to wait until Adam was done cooking. But the stove is still hot. I don't want to get over here and try to play with the mock draft. And they're like, hey, we actually just traded these picks that you trying to trade.
Right.
So you come into the draft, you're thinking O-line, you're thinking, but now, hey, receiver could be one. And there's a few guys out there that I would like to see in the Burgundy and gold.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Matthew Golden from Texas comes to mind, talking about that height
Speed.
and speed. I've talked about Jayden Higgins so much. He's not much more so of like your burner, even though I think he did run like a 4.4. But
Mm,
like when you watch his film, he's much more that prototypical kind of the other side of Terry, bigger guy, that wide catch radius. Jalen
yeah.
Knoll, his teammate at Iowa State, is kind of that slot and deep threat. Very good route runner, committed to getting off the line and being able to come up and make blocks. A lot of good wide receivers that you could obviously fit the bill for you in this draft class, Anthony. But what do you, now that that being said, what do you do at 29? Let's say trade back is not in the cards there. What are you feeling at 29 right now, Anthony?
Man, I quickly went to a mock draft here on my computer, and at the top receiver you got Luther Burden, and then you've got your guy Jalen Noel that you just said, Jalen Royce, so Isaiah Bond is a speed guy. You got a lot of options. Right? It's going to end up being best available, but I'm at the point where I trust Adam Peters. You know what I mean? I trusted what he's going to do. You even
Absolutely.
got the trade opportunity right there. So being at the end of the first, there's a good chance, just how things may play out, that you just back out. You say, you know what? I'm gonna trade back into the early first, right? Because you go and get the D tackle, you get bring in Kinlaw. I don't think they're gonna go and try to get another defensive tackle. Edge is a position that you want to address, but I think all the top edges are gonna be gone by 29. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Is this? Let me ask you. Do you think he's gonna? Is this something where you would want to trade up for somebody? Like, I could see that happening. If there's a player that's falling and they're getting close to like 20, I could see Adam packaging some picks and trying to move up a few just to grab a splash player that's dropped a few spots.
Yeah, it's such a great question because the edge class in particular, I've done a bunch of investigating on it, and there is a plethora of talented guys. And so, like to your point, the top edge guys, if they really are out of there, do you really want to pigeonhole and force yourself to take the top guy, or if there's other positions of need? Whereas in this edge class, you could feel very comfortable with a Braden Swinson in the second to third round, or an Antoine Powell Ryland in that third kind of fourth round, who had 16 sacks for the Hokies last year. So I think that it's a really intriguing question. The whole trade up scenario I find very intriguing because a guy like Mike Green, who obviously had a awesome Senior Bowl, really proved himself. But then his workout at his pro day just really put him over the top. And the consensus is now, like I interviewed Trevor Sikkema of PFF a couple weeks ago, and he thought that
Yeah.
Mike Green was a top 15 pick. And it looks like that is the case. So if a guy like that fits the kind of what you're talking about, the narrative of possibly getting that 20, do you move up for it? But then it brings it into question with only 5 draft picks, would that one player be worth enough of not being able to stockpile other positions where this is a heavy draft in running back, defensive tackle, edge, and tight end? And so that's
I,
something to always think about. So I honestly think the trade up is going to be hard, but trading back might even be harder based on if anybody even wants to do it. You know what I mean,
yeah.
Anthony?
Yeah. But I mean, you know what, Joe? The way that the moves that Adam has been making, AP has been making, is we were one game away.
Right.
All right. Now, mind you,
That's fair. That's a good point.
and my basketball team that I'm a fan of was in the finals. All right. And these two, and they went two different directions. I think AP's in a position to say we need to stockpile the address the need that we need now
Hmm.
to try to win a trophy. I don't care about the guy that's in college right now, right? Like there's
It's fair.
you're talking about like I don't honestly, I mean, they're gonna be out there eventually,
Yeah.
right? We were past that stage of like stockpiling picks and getting younger. Like, no, 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 guys, you're one game away from being in the Super Bowl. Fix the most glaring needs now. You did that with Laramie Tunsil. Yes, well he'll get the penalties down. I think you get the penalties down with him from play calling. All right, they're not going to be dropping back as much where he's got to be one on one so long. Like that's not going to be what he's going to have to do. Okay, so you haven't seen a lot of holdings against Coleman and Trent Scott. I think you'll see the penalties come down with Tunsil. But I love the fact that he's been in the league for this long. He's going to lock down that left tackle's position. Debo, he's going to do his thing. You're addressing needs that are going to help this team get better right now. Right now. So take the opportunity to trade up because like Joe Witt said, 16, 17 guys that are going to go get after the football. If it's, hey, more people that can get in that rotation that are going to be talented, add them. Bring them in there. Do it. You got to make moves to try to win now. Don't think about 2, 3 years down the line because you're there, right? You're there.
Man, that is such a great point because obviously making it to the NFC Championship game, your point being is, well, we need to be able to maximize our opportunity at the moment. And so to be able to get a top tier blue chip kind of player like that, you have to be willing to move up forward, which is something I haven't really heard anyone else say, Anthony. So credit to you because as soon as you said that, a light bulb went off. Like, look, you are right to like, even though you only have five, you might as well get the best bang for your buck if you're able to be able to grab that guy. Now,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, the Detroit media really has a lot to say about Washington. It seems like ever since the week leading up to the playoff game. And they've talked about that they think that Jayden Daniels could possibly have a sophomore slump. And look, there's going to be a lot of people, fans around the league, they're going to think that as well. What do you say to that, Anthony?
Honestly, that's not an exciting take to me, because it's very common to have the sophomore slump. Why? Because when you pop on the scene, nobody has tape on you. All right.
Mm-hmm.
You saw how later on in the year the teams that gave Jayden trouble were the ones that frankly had played him before. Philly, right? They were able to throw in some other wrinkles. And the way that he prepares himself, he gets ahead of the game. He's watching film. He's watching it at a faster clip. So anything that they're doing on defense has to be newly installed. So now they got an entire year of tendencies and things like that. But here's what's to Washington's favor. Debo Samuel. How is he going to unroll? You don't know what this offense is going to look like. We have a good idea, sure. You can say, okay, he fits in with where Zacchaeus was, whatever, whatever. But there's still going to be things that are different. There's still going to be some wrinkles. And saying that he's going to have a sophomore slump, I ain't tripping. But the issue is, why y'all over here? Why y'all all over here on you know what I mean, down on
Mm-hmm.
M Street and on Pennsylvania Ave? What you doing over here? Y'all must be visiting. Make sure they taking a tour as they continue making their way down DC and worrying about what we doing. Because we'll see you again. But next time they may have to come down. That's why they're over here. They're trying to understand where the lay of the land is so they can go on a road game because there's going to be a home playoff game this season. All right.
Absolutely.
And it could very well be the Hawaii Blue coming into town. All right.
I really
So
hope so.
maybe that's what it is. I just honestly, I don't know why you over here in DC? You over here in DC?
Absolutely. The same thing
Hurt
about
dog.
the Philly fans absolutely loving to talk about Washington, especially our moves in the offseason, talk about the old Wash guys. It's very similar to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, in the sense of they view us as a threat, right, to what they have themselves, and they don't want that to be taken away, right? And they view Washington as possibly a roadblock in that, which I absolutely love thinking about, to be perfectly honest with you. But I want to ask you, the tight end room. A lot has been said about Ben Sinnott. Oh, I wanted to say real quick. My buddy Deuce, who I do the Red Zone and Lab podcast, we do a draft show every Sunday night. But he brought up a great point about the Jayden Daniels thing, where yeah, defenses are able to watch Jayden Daniels, but in the same breath, now Cliff Kingsbury and Jayden Daniels can go back and watch what defenses were doing to them, and they could come up with new things for the next season. So maybe we're not going to be doing the same things as we were last year, especially with the added guys that we do have in the room, like you talked about with Debo and Laramie Tunsil. So a lot of credit for Deuce for bringing up that point because I think it's a fantastic one. But with the tight end room, are you giving up on Ben Sinnott as possibly being able to be a good contributor? A lot of fans want the tight ends to be highly sought after.
No, I'm not. I'm not giving up on it. You already knew the guy was a hybrid type of a player, anyways.
Right.
There is a transition from the league, from college to the league. All right, like everybody thinks like you can just fit in, and it's just hey, if you're good, you're good. There is a transition. That game is fast. All right, there's a lot of we've had a few other draft picks that you could see that the game was just a little bit faster for them, and that's fine. All right, now you've got it under your belt. but the first year, the coaches will give you a couple of chances. They'll pat you on the back and say it's okay. Year two, it's like, nah, bro, we need you to go.
Mm.
So I do want him to step up and find himself into the role. But I totally understand it. Like I get it. You get there and you're trying to feel yourself out. Everything's happening at lightning fast speed. The verbiage is new. Like it's all new. It's all new. Now, hey, this year you've been here before, right? You've been here before. You're gonna have to step up, and I think he will. He'll step up to the challenge.
Was there a clicking moment in that regard for you in your career when you did get to the NFL? And obviously, you were working hard was not something that was you were shying away from. Obviously, the
Yeah.
reason why you got there is because you worked very hard for what you were able to be given. But was there
Yeah.
like a clicking moment for you where it was like, okay, I can be able to orchestrate myself in this?
Man, I always felt that if I got the right opportunity, I could get in front of somebody, I could impress.
Okay.
But getting into the league, man, like that first day in Miami, I got knocked on my ass.
Mm.
And I'm looking up at the stars. I'm like, okay, you got to go fast, period. Like whatever you do, just go fast. And, I'm willing to pick up any challenge and go full speed at it. And with that worked out for me. So getting into Washington, I had been a film guy. Like I was watching Houston Texans tape before Kyle Shanahan had even gotten up there. So I was watching Andre Johnson.
Mm.
I was mentally taking those reps. I don't know what those other guys were doing that were on the roster at that time. And I'm not worried about that. I did what I had to do to get myself prepared. You know what I mean? So once again, undrafted free agent, I ain't got nothing to do but play PlayStation. All right, and practice football. I'm gonna sit here and watch this tape and get better at my craft. Because I mean, honestly, bro, I'm gonna tell you this. Anybody that's on practice squad, you don't understand what type of opportunity you have. You're going against the ones every single day. Every single day. You got to give them hell. All right. So Ben Sinnott was going against the ones, Bobby Wagner every single day. Year two, you got to show up. You got to be better. Jordan McGee, he was going against the ones every single day. He's got to show up better this year. And that's another reason why I don't think you trip about having to giving away draft picks. Because you got a McGee, you got other guys that are going to grow into roles and have impacts on this team right now. So, I went off on a tangent. I forgot which way I was going with that.
No, you're absolutely right though, and I absolutely love that because like there is a thing around guys like when you get to an all men's team and everything like about being a try hard, right? Trying to do too much just to impress, but in the same breath, that's what makes you better. I can go remember going back to high school football talking about the guys on the I forget what they called them on the other side, but
The
basically
scout team, scout
scout
team.
team that you make us better and everything like that. Like I totally get it, and you're absolutely right because if you do try hard, that kind of Michael Jordan kind of mindset, you make
Yeah.
everyone better, and that's what Michael Jordan was essentially successful in doing to his teammates. As much as he was considered harsh to his teammates, made them better, made them honestly a predator rather than
Yeah.
a victim, right? And that's
Yeah.
what you're trying to build there with the UDFA's. What about running back, Anthony? I know we talked about trading up and everything, but do you think that Washington should be investing in a running back in this draft?
I do. I do. I think that, latter half of the year, you kind of saw a drop off in the production from the position. It just ended up being Jayden or that was it. And so I'd love to see just another person in there that, brings, lights a fire. You need another body, you just need another body. That's a physical position. Eckler went out with some injuries and, you just need to have somebody else a little spark, and this is one of those positions that fresh eyes is helpful, right? You can get a guy that comes in there and he brings a spark and get some big plays and big runs and just bring another dynamic to the offense. And then I could see it being bringing in a player that allows more creativity, right? A few more ways to attack. If you find somebody that can run some routes and spend some time out there, catching passes, not downfield, but just changing it up, making linebackers get out of the box and cover. That's something that is attractive as well to think about. So
Mm.
there's different ways to go, and I just as long as you find them playmakers that are going to be impactful, bring them in. So yeah, bring a running back in this draft for sure.
My man. To wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you, Anthony. But I haven't heard this talked about a lot. As much as we love what Jayden Daniels did this year, and he played probably one of the best seasons that any rookie quarterback has played, if we're being honest about the situation. But what can Jayden Daniels do better in this offseason? How can he get better?
Mm, man, that is a great question. I think and I always say this about quarterbacks that they have to make the big boy throws. I call it a big boy throw, where it's like You throw it over there, even though like the guy's kind of covered. He makes some of those.
Like the
But it's just
Terry McLaurin touchdown against New Orleans.
yeah. He's got that trust to just be like, I'm going
Yeah,
over there. So he's got those. I want to see him maybe find himself into maybe a better play or a better throw. As people pick up on your tendencies, right? Um, Shoot, put in a little second, a little punch to the jaw, a little knockout for a double move, right? So if you build your connection with your receiver, and then you say, "Hey, we're going to run this screen," but if they're jumping on it, let me know. Now I'll give you a little signal. We'll fake it and we'll throw it down the field. So just finding another way to attack. You got to be one step ahead of these guys because people are studying every single thing you do. They're studying your tendencies, your timing, how you read things out. So you're gonna have to, you know, go to one, fake the two, then come back to one or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm not a quarterback coach, but this is just how this league works. I've seen, look, I'm telling you, bro, when I first got to Washington, I remember, and it blew my mind, they would script a play for a specific coverage. It's not uncommon, right?
right,
They're like, this play is most favorable against this coverage.
right.
And every time we ran it, we would run it against that coverage. Well, Kyle, what happens if they don't run the coverage that you want them to run? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, then you're kind of SOL.
Your SOL. Well, you need to be able at the quarterback position and instead of just making it robotic for them, help them go to the next read, right? Give another look so that we can be prepared for another option. That's what I want to see, right? Take it to the next level. Just find a way to not get so drawn in on the same, habits.
Right.
Find a way to break that. Find some new, find your tendencies and then change those. So the way he prepares, I think he'll be able to do it.
Yeah,
I'm
you did a
excited.
great job. It's a tough question because honestly, at every level of what Jayden Daniels was able to do with either his legs, with his eyes, with his mind, he made a lot of really good decisions last year. You can't even say limit the turnovers because he did a great job at doing that and producing one of the best offenses in the first half of the season that nobody has ever seen before. But like not punting the football in like 12 quarters or something like that was absolutely
Yeah.
insane. But like protecting himself just a little bit more and
Yeah.
not having to, and it wasn't his fault to his own, but just trying to be able to limit yourself in that running game. But this is
Yeah.
a really difficult question to answer because how can Jayden Daniels get better? But one thing that we
Yeah.
know for sure, he's going to work hard regardless to be able to sharpen his craft. And so
Oh
that's why
yeah.
you feel so confident with that young man and the kind of work ethic that he does
Oh
have.
yeah. I'll think of one like how he navigates the pocket.
Yeah,
How he normally kind of drops back and lets people run. Like people will be ready to come off on some of those things.
yeah,
So just watching tape on that and mentally coming up with different game plans. Maybe you're looking to see how do you help your lineman not have a holding penalty. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, so ways to all of his improvement is probably going to be mental. It's going to be leadership stuff. It's going to be off the field things that take him to a whole other level, and that's going to elevate that whole offense and really the whole team.
Yeah, and it's music to my ears when I hear like the whole coaching staff coming back, Marcus Mariota, Zach Ertz coming. Like that's exactly what the young man needs, and to be able to continue to grow as a leader. But my next question for you, sir, what team should Washington be trying to build to beat? Because you're talking about you have to be able to get to that certain level, right? You want to be able to. You made it to the NFC Championship game. You got to be able to get to the next level. If there were a team that you had to pick that Washington should be building to be able to beat, which team would that be?
Man, I think the obvious one is Philly.
Yep,
You know what I mean? It's
I
got to
agree
be
with you.
Philly. Yeah, they're the top dog. They won the Super Bowl, but they're in your division. You got to beat them to get into the playoffs. You know what I mean? You got to beat them to win the division. So you're going to see these guys. They know who you are. You know who they are. So when those two games show up and they lock the daggum gate up, then we gonna see who's the better team. That's who you're fighting right now. We ain't worried about anybody in blue, in Hawaii blue, I should say. Let me not, anybody in the division you want to pay attention to, but it's Philly. It's got to be Philly. And ultimately, man, it's coming down to I think it's really that offensive side. You saw the way he got two players that are going to affect the game now. Because going way back to the young receiver, if we would have gotten into the draft and you didn't have that wide receiver two position locked down, getting the top receiver at 29 or trading up to get him, that would have been a great splash to add that type of electric player. But I don't know if he's going to have the right like addition to the offense that you need to get to the Super Bowl.
I
You
got
get
you.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you were picking in the top five and it's like, hey, like let me just go back, you're getting Julio Jones, you're like, yeah, lock him into wide receiver one. He's going to help elevate this team. Getting a guy at 29 who hadn't been in the who hadn't played Philly, right? It's
Right.
a different animal when you get in there playing Philly. There's a different animal when you go over there to the link. So you can't come in here just getting the kid. Now I want the kid on the team for what they can bring, but I just can't roll them in starting. So it's got to be Philly.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Obviously, my family and I, we live in Delaware, so I work up around Philly all the time. And this past week, I was wearing my Washington gear up there, and a couple guys made comments to me throughout the day. You know, it was funny. One dude said, "You can't be wearing that around here. Get the f out of here." And I said, to him, "I said, look, man, somebody's got to make this area smell good. You know what I'm saying?" But Anthony, I can't thank you enough for joining me for this. I know you're busy as it is on a Sunday, but I really appreciate your time as always. But before you get out of here, you just like to plug your social media handle and your show, brother.
Yeah, man. Check me out on all your streaming platforms at Believe Commanders is the show. Believe Commanders is the show, I should say. Coming here to April, I'll put some more stuff in as we go heading into the draft. I'll have to plan ahead for that. But check me out on at Rated Armstrong, my social handles. And then you can hit me up for any speaking or MC gigs. AnthonyArmstrongSpeaks.com.
My man, you know, everyone watching would probably be willing to subscribe to that one, brother, and be able to come see you because you do a great job motivating people. But enjoy your Sunday, man, and enjoy your time with your family as always, brother. Until next time.
Appreciate you. Yeah, have a good one.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Anthony Armstrong. Always appreciate Anthony's time, man. He is so smart in his not only just his work ethic, but being able to, in a fan way, to be able to break down things to describe them in really good illustration and form to be able so we can understand it, right? And a lot of credit to him because he did a great job. But to wrap this up, boys, let's answer some fan questions that were submitted. This first one is from Tony Franchise on Twitter. Thank you, Tony. Out of the prospects a team has had official visits with which one is the most intriguing? I would say it's Olafemi Oladejo from UCLA. One of the reasons is because, like, I did a lot of investigating for the edge group overall in this draft class, and like I said, there is a lot of quality guys here, and it's not just because I'm like blowing smoke to say I watch these guys, I think they're really good, but I'm saying that as somebody who knows that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. really excel at putting people in really good positions to succeed and giving with those traits of what these draft prospects kind of have. I think that this coaching staff would do wonders with a lot of these guys. But which brings me to Olafemi, where I wasn't. There's nothing on UCLA. I can't watch it. Like, I don't want to watch just highlight videos because that doesn't really tell the whole story. I need to be able to watch a lot of these reps to be able to see where they deploy him, how he does against a guard, how he does against a center, how does he do on stunt plays, how does he do in isolating blocks, and being able to keep his outside hand open and free to be able to stop and create that shield for the outside run, setting the edge, right? I want to be able to see those sort of things. So Olafemi, I'd say, is probably the most intriguing prospect in the sense of if they brought him in for a top 30 visit, which we know at this point, they did that with Jayden Daniels. They did that with Brandon Coleman. So it's something that take into consideration because the top 30 visits obviously have value. And there obviously could be a kind of gamesmanship thing going on with the top 30 visits. But I think it's honestly to get to know guys a lot more, taking guys out to dinner. And so I think that Olafemi is probably the most intriguing to me, Tony, specifically because I haven't been able to watch him, and I'm really intrigued to see what his strengths are and what they possibly see in the young man. Because if they are able to get him in here, and that's not somebody that's widely considered a top 32 pick, or I think that somebody probably you're looking at the second to third round, and maybe they are very confident in being able to go with a prospect like Olafemi. And I've heard that Ryan Fowler talking about him, where he actually just interviewed him on Friday. So his episode, the commanding the huddle will be out this week with the interview with Olafemi. So I would really go out and say you should go watch that when it does come out, because I'm going to just be able to find out more about this young man. But he talked about how he was like yelling commands from the sidelines, even when he wasn't on the field, to be able to help his teammates and put them in a good position, which really speaks as a commander. Because you look at Mikey Sainristil when he was at Michigan, he only played cornerback one season at Michigan. He was a wide receiver before that. And when he stepped in as a corner, you could see him pre-snap telling his teammates what to do. This is a guy who's played corner 1 year in at Michigan. Think about the big competition teams, and imagine a guy being a wide receiver, being able to convert to a corner in 1 year, and in that year being able to command guys on what to do. He's not confused. He's telling. He knows what's coming. And so I think that that's a sort of prospect that obviously speaks to this coaching staff and to this organization to say that is a commander, getting that commander label, which is what we are trying to figure out. And I think at this point, Dan Quinn and AP have been very vocal about what a commander is, and that is a dog-ass competitor, somebody who's willing to do any and everything to be able to win. And that's what really speaks about Jayden Daniels and others, especially a guy like Brandon Coleman, who's willing to move without sour grapes, right? Thank you, Tony. That was a great question. The next is the Colonel, who we saw yesterday. We celebrated his birthday yesterday. His birthday is actually the day after my mother's. So I think his birthday was on Thursday or Friday. So belated happy birthday to you, Colonel. We really appreciated being able to hang out with you guys. And his question is, I'm curious to get Anthony's take on what we're lacking in the wide receiver room. Is it breakout speed, i.e. Xavier Worthy, or size, like i.e. DK Metcalf, to come down with the contested balls? Which you absolutely answered it perfectly. You heard Anthony answer this himself, of course. I wrote questions down for Anthony before he submitted these, which is really funny because he did answer that question. Whereas it's size and speed. And obviously everyone is going to say that. You want to be able to get size and speed, but typically it's very hard to be able to have that marriage and somebody who's also going to catch the football, block very well. And I think that's probably the outlier in with the wide receiver room, whereas you're looking for the traits. Yes, you could get open. Yes, you can catch a football, but can you block? And that's one thing, like, I would imagine why Jahan Dotson was possibly traded away from this team, because maybe the blocking was not his forte, something he was very interested in doing. And so I think that is something that's very important to this coaching staff. And that's why somebody like Noah Brown was brought back. So I wholeheartedly agree with Anthony that the speed vertically is something you really, really want to be able to possess, because horizontally, that's where you already have a guy like Deebo Samuel. Maybe Jalen Noel is somebody that fits that bill because he could act as a backup to Deebo in some cases. But then that being said, you're essentially saying that Noah Brown, KJ Osborne, Michael Gallup are going to be your collection of twos, you could say, per whatever. But I think that speed and the size is something that they really, really do covet. And there's only a certain amount of guys that possess that in this draft class, coupled with the catching ability. And so I think that the size and speed is obviously an easy thing to say, but what Anthony said is exactly that, is the size and speed. Now, the next question from the Colonel. The only offseason head scratcher for me was Javon Kinlaw. Not that we picked him up as part of the defensive line rotation, but the size of his contract. Am I the only one that thinks $15 million a season for a rotational run stopper is a little pricey? Well, that's the funny thing, because when you talk to people, like I talked to Trevor Sikkema, I talked to Logan Paulson, and the one thing they do say is that Javon Kinlaw is not the best first to run. But what really spoke to me about what Logan was saying is the wow plays of Javon Kinlaw, where he's able to get off a block, be able to get to the backfield in a very fast manner. Maybe that is few and far between. But one thing we can say in confidence is that this coaching staff is going to put Javon Kinlaw in a situation for those wow plays to be much more consistent and repetitive and being able to produce it. And we saw that with somebody like Dante Fowler last season, whereas maybe an afterthought coming into this last season, but really put in a really good position to be able to get double-digit sacks. Even somebody like Frankie Louvu, who was all over the field, a huge difference maker for this team, coming in with 8.5 sacks. You really said, okay, they put him in a very good position to win. That's what I think with Javon Kinlaw is that you're putting him in a position where he's going to be able to get you more wow plays and maybe take away from the ability of the run stopping, which is why they brought in the Daniel Wises, why they brought in the Eddie Goldmans, right? And so I think that this football team with Javon Kinlaw, it was a head scratcher to me, because you just unloaded John Allen's contract of $16 million per. But that being said, I know that the money part of Javon Kinlaw's contract has been skewed, because I think it's not $45 million guaranteed. Everyone loves to say that $45 million contract. I don't think it's smart to give that to a player. Okay, maybe you're right. A player like Javon Kinlaw, who has some big errors in his play. But really, it's only $30 million guaranteed. And essentially what you're saying is it's 2 seasons and then you have the out. And so it's not really like you're saying you're putting all of this into it. But I understand where they're saying John Allen was very good in certain spots and situations. What you can verifiably say is that Javon Kinlaw's wow plays in the passing game, as meaning as a rusher, is much more so than you would have gotten with John Allen. And look, I love John Allen. He's not the same player as he once was, which he was very good at times, being able to collapse the pocket and be a force back there. But with Javon Kinlaw, you're just adding another freak into this in the sense of instead of having it on the outside purely, you're having somebody on the interior who's able to get after the quarterback, which is very, very important. It's I would say it's as important as an edge rusher being able to collapse the pocket, being able to force that quarterback to move his legs. If you go back to Michael Penix and what the pick he threw to Quan Martin, somebody's at his feet. And that's what I said the week before. You got to be able to get him flustered, get his feet moving. And that's exactly what happened on that play where somebody's at his feet. He's not able to step into the throw, just chucks it, overthrows it. Quan Martin comes down for it and runs it back a little bit. And somebody like Javon Kinlaw is absolutely somebody who is capable of being able to collapse that on the interior and forcing these quarterbacks into much worse plays as being throws. And that's something that when you go back to Dallas, quarterbacks did routinely against that defense, where they were just honestly scared of what was coming, getting the ball out of their hands, and those corners were in an opportunistic kind of way, being able to come down with the football, and that's what you want to replicate here, and that's why I see with Javon Kinlaw, is as much as they want to say the run stopping, absolutely, Javon Kinlaw is like much more that pass rush specialist, freak of nature, and I think that you could probably coach him up to be better versus the run, and that's where somebody like Bobby Wagner comes in into play and being able to help Javon Kinlaw to get in that position of knowing what's coming, what's not. And if we're being perfectly honest, that Jets team overall was not a dumpster fire, but it was very chaotic last year of letting go of their head coach early on. You could imagine why things would kind of fall apart from a player standpoint where everyone is playing more individually rather than as a team. And that seemed to be the case with the Jets last season for a lot of the time. And that was a really good question, Colonel. I appreciate it, of course. Now, the next question that we have is from Tim Towner in Discord. Do any of you have summer vacation plans? Winter went by in a flash. A lot of people out there probably would say winter did not go by in a flash. It seemed very long, especially here in southern Delaware, where we got hit with more snow than typical, and we were not prepared for it. But to be honest with you, I don't have much summer plans. I did want to put this invitation out there. My wife and I are actually getting baptized next weekend, and that will be streamed live. So if anybody who watches this show is a fan of this show, I know that this is kind of like out of the show parameters, but I'd love to hear that you wanted to kind of hear our testimony, watch us get baptized. It's going to be streamed, and I'll be uploading that to Twitter and possibly the Discord. So if you want to be able to view that, and I'd be really honored to have anybody watching and to just follow our journey, not only on this show, but through Christ, of course. But honestly, dude, I don't have many plans in the summer. I'm not like a big vacation guy. If I get forced to go on one, of course, I'll go. But it's not something like I really strive to do. For 4 or 5 years, I didn't take any vacation time with my company. I would just continue to work because we needed the money, right? And not as much, obviously I have PTO, but it's like you also spend a lot of money on vacations, and that's not something I've really have had the privilege of being able to do in years. But that's a really good question, Tim. I appreciate it. This next one is from Andy Lockhart and the 1 Point Safety Show in the UK. Oi! What's up, Andy? And Andy is one dang good pool player, good crap talker, and a really good friend. And as much as I give him crap in the Discord with his takes, especially with Brandon Ayuk, I will say that he knows I love him, and I really do. And his question is, would you be looking into a kicker in the later rounds, such as Fitzgerald from Florida, or do you trust Mr. OCD? Well, I don't want to call him Mr. OCD. I feel like that's rude, but with Zane, you feel confident with Zane in just being able to provide you with the floor, right? He's not going to be the superstar kicker. He's not going to be hitting 90 to 100% of his field goals. He's going to hit his extra points, which is very important. But I went into this season saying, is it really that crucial, right, to be able to have that kicker? But I also knew beforehand that with a rookie quarterback, you got to be able to get all the points you possibly can. And maybe kicking those field goals is something that's going to be very important. And we saw that in the Giants game where field goals were the difference because they had lost Graham Gano in that game. And they obviously couldn't kick an extra point. They didn't feel comfortable with that, so they went for twos, which was obviously the difference in the football game. But when you go down the list of the whole season, field goals were obviously enormous and very important, especially when you go back to that Cowboys game with the missed extra point. As much as we like to say kickers are not worth that much, they absolutely are at the end of the day. We say that in the offseason, and then when it comes to game time, we're all complaining about kickers because he missed one or so. They're obviously very important. With that being said, I don't think you spend a draft pick on it. And honestly, I'm just speaking of, I know that Anthony's talking about the trade up and being able to get impact players, and that's something obviously you need to do. But one thing that Adam Peters is very smart at being able to do is finding those traits, finding those players in the later rounds, and being able to bring them in here and then trusting the coaching staff to build them up to be contributors. And if more than contributors, a starter and possibly somebody, a foundational piece for you in the future. And it's not crazy to say that that's possible with an undrafted free agent. It happens routinely. It happens a lot. Antonio Brown, I'm pretty sure, was a UDFA. And so just going back and looking at it, I know that Adam Peters and San Francisco drafted Jake Moody in the 3rd round, and obviously he's still kicking for them. But do I honestly feel comfortable with how many picks we have of using one of those on a kicker? And I'm not going to, with Zane Gonzalez on the roster, I don't think that's smart. But I do think the smarter aspect is if there is somebody left over, let's say one of those kickers doesn't get drafted, you bring them in as a UDFA and you have them compete. And if you aren't able to be able to get somebody in that draft class that you feel comfortable with, there's other kickers that you could bring in for the competition, of course. Because like we saw last year, you could have issues with these guys, and being able to rotate them in and out is going to be very important for you in being able to win football games, like we saw against the Bucs in the playoffs, where that Doink inevitably won the game for us, which I'm very grateful for that was able to happen. The first playoff win in a long time, because man, did we freaking need it, bro. But it was a great question, Andy, and no, I don't think that that's probably the smartest route for this football team, but Lord knows I'm probably wrong. Adam Peters gets paid a lot of money to do what he does, and that's for good reason. The next question is from Deluxe in the Discord. Thank you, Deluxe. In your draft evaluations, have any punt/kick returners stood out? So I haven't looked at wide receivers yet. I haven't looked at running backs yet. And so I'm going off of what the Red Zone and the Lab and their draft show, what we're kind of highlighting, because I don't have as much time as I did in the past before I had kids and also driving a long way with work. I don't have the ability to watch as much film as I used to, so I'm going with the flow of what that show has provided. So we've looked at linebackers, we've looked at safeties, we've looked at corners, we've looked at edge rushers, of course, like I talked about. We've looked at tight ends. And so I think tonight's episode is going to be cornerbacks. So if you haven't already, go and check out the Red Zone Lab. We're going to be highlighting corners tonight. But I know that when we talked to Ryan Fowler, he talked about Quincy Avery from Louisville, so a corner that can be able to return punts for you. But I also don't want to take out of consideration of what we have on this football team and possibly retaining somebody like Jamison Crowder on a vet minimum deal. Maybe Jamison would require more on other teams. Well, let's wait that out, and let's see if that really does come in, because I would imagine Jamison Crowder is a very smart young man, and Jamison Crowder would probably be wanting to come to this football team to be able to build on what was already played out and put out last season. He was obviously very important for us. So I don't want to take J-Mo out of the eyesight of the fan base, because that's somebody that could easily be added here again for being able to do so. Now, the next question from Deluxe. What position other than running back won't get drafted this year? Running back is too easy. With only 5 picks, let's call it an eventual 6. What positions don't get addressed in the draft and add depth through UDFA? If I had it my way, I would say it's tight end. And I'm not trying to downplay Ben Sinnott. I'm not trying to downplay or be disrespectful to Colson Yankoff, who we got as a UDFA. Everyone was very high on, right? I would say tight end because CJ Dippre from Alabama, I call him CJ Drippin. He is literally one of the best blockers I've seen from a tight end standpoint. How strong he is, 32 reps on the bench. Watching his play style, being able to move bodies out of the way, going one-on-one against somebody like James Pierce to be able to make him go around the carousel of the quarterback, being able to go up against his Nick Scorton and these other guys, does a very good job. Obviously does lose a couple reps in depth, but for the most part, This is somebody that you could have as a backup to John Bates long term. And I am very confident in saying that because I'm very invested in creating the hog mentality up front in the trenches for this football team. I want to build a damn juggernaut. And so how you do that is by getting filthy, by getting violent, by getting some strong dudes that are looking to be able to get a meal tonight and some hungry dogs in that breath. And I think somebody like CJ Dippre is absolutely who fits that bill. And I think that he is right now projected in that 6th, 7th UDFA kind of range. So if I'm going to say any position, I would say it's tight end without a doubt. And I know I've said that about running back as well. And I have. And I still feel that way, because that's how confident I am in this coaching staff, that they don't have to go for a running back high in order to get really good production out of them. I trust Anthony Land a heck of a whole lot. I trust Cliff Kingsbury to be able to identify what kind of running back really fits his bill. And as much as we are talking about that home run hitter, when he had a really good running game in Arizona, it was James Conner, who's not really known to be a home run hitter, much more of that in between the tackles, kind of just hardworking thumper kind of guy that can catch out of the backfield, but isn't going to wow you in terms of those explosive plays, but just doing what he's supposed to do, reading the offensive line, hitting those right points where he needs to in those holes, and being able to get upfield. But obviously, Kenyon Drake was that kind of separator where you could sit here and say, does Jeremy McNichols and Austin Eckler kind of fit that bill? They do, in a sense. And as much as Austin is kind of at the end of things, he showed you last year he's not that far off in terms of being that kind of explosive piece that defenses honestly have to take into consideration. And they have to put assets there for in case that does happen. They can do that like we saw last year where they kind of forget about him. Well, now he's ripping off a 34-yard, 40-yard pass/run, and you're kind of wondering how the heck did Washington get in field goal range already? And it's because you overlooked somebody. So I do think that the running back class itself is awesome, and it's very plentiful, and there's a lot of them. I'm just not sure if that is a piece that is really going to extend Washington against these teams like Philly. But in the same breath, all 4 running backs on this football team right now are scheduled to be free agents after next season. So what are you going to do for the future in that mindset? And we can look at it and say, okay, well, it's not going to be panic time because you still got the coaching staff to be able to say whatever you bring in here we can work with, but you still have free agency, you still have the draft there as well, that you could always go down that route. But honestly, I want to add running back. I think it's a cherry on top. I don't think it's the actual sundae in terms of importance and necessity for this offense to be productive. Because the argument that I would make is the offense wasn't the problem last year. Running back wasn't the problem last year. It was defense last year. It was adding offensive weapons in terms of being outside in the exterior to be able to create cushion for Jayden Daniels to operate in, to take eyes off of him. And I would also be willing to say that the offensive line was much more of the hindrance in being able to do things at times, especially against top-tier competition like Philly in the NFC Championship game. And they really were able to do that with Debo and Laramie Tunsil. So do I honestly believe that that is going to be something that really separates us in terms of being able to compete at a high level against these other teams? I don't. And as much as it probably is ignorant in saying that, that's just my personal opinion. All right. And I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody or what they want and everything like that. It's just running back is one of those positions that is highly sought after in the fan aspect because it gets a lot of attention. I know that Saquon Barkley, of course, has made a name for himself, but we also have to admit that it's a correlation. There is a relationship of that offensive line being one of the best in the NFL and being one damn good running back in Saquon Barkley, and that marriage has been fruitful in production for that football team. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Let's make sure that we're solidifying those trenches so when we do get that running back in here, he's able to hit the ground running, and it's almost impossible to stop because of what they're able to do in relationship and congruence with one another, if that makes sense. If I'm not making sense, guys, I'm sorry. But the next question from Deluxe. Who would you want to play in the home opener? Oh, that's easy, man. It's Philly. I want to play Philly again. I've been biting at the bit for it. That 55, we got to be able to put that behind us. And I know that it doesn't sit well, honestly, probably with the team, because that, as much as it was disrespectful for us for that to happen, and it's not on it's not Philly's behalf, it's ours. That what kind of happened to us, right? And I think it all stems from the fumble, from the big run, and things kind of just fell apart from there. But the positive aspect of it is this offense was still able to put up good points against a very good defense that suffocated the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that was a murder on national television for everyone to see at the Super Bowl Sunday, where it's like Homer with Bart, in The Simpsons, where he's choking, he's like, like that's what it was for Super Bowl Sunday, was the Eagles just strangling them in front of everybody. So I would love for it to be Philly, to kind of just make sure and to show that we are leveling up in terms of competition, the comparison of then and now. And honestly, you know how college kind of, it used to be, I think it used to be a thing back in the day where they would go against that Division II kind of team, the Appalachian State, you could say, who is a very good program in themselves. But just like going against that lower tier to kind of get your warm up going, right? I much more so view it with Philly. Going against Philly week one was almost like with Tampa Bay, where you're kind of seeing the elevation of the competition, and you see week one, okay, that was the competition level. And then when we go to the Giants there, it's like, okay, that was a very good team that we went against with Tampa Bay. And obviously New York is good in some breath, but like we're able to hang and we're able to actually win this. If we're able to score touchdowns, it wouldn't have even been a game, to be honest with you. We shouldn't have even kicked those field goals. We should have been able to punch that ball in, but things needed to click, right? But it's just showing that competition being hard and stiff, terrible word usage, giggity, forgive me. But I think that having a really good competitive team going against week one really benefits your football team in terms of what you have, the new additions you're being added, and just making sure you're finding that concoction to work. And I don't think it's going to be hard for this football team. For the most part, they've done a lot of recycling, you could say, but they've added some really good ones here. But just as a team, that mold and going against really good competition week one is going to really set you over the top. So as much as I would love for it to be Philly, I would love for it to be a division rival for the home opener, just because it's one of those things I would love. Like, I know that we beat Dallas last year, and it kills me that against Trey Lance, we had to win on the final play. And I'm not trying to take anything away from them. I'm not. I loved this football team, what they were to produce this year. But for a team that made it the NFC Championship game, we should not have had to win against Dallas on the final play. That we should have been able to stomp their necks out. And we should have been able to walk away from that very confident. And so I'm on that mindset as well. I want to be able to go against Dak and company and be able to go against the ones, be able to show what this football team is truly about. Because I don't think that we did that against the division rivals as much as we should have. And so I would love to be able to have them week one, because that'll really get to show us where this football team is, because they want to talk about the sophomore slump. They want to talk about us coming down to earth a little bit. And of course, maybe we will. But I trust what we have in the building to be able to make sure that those losses are worse than where we got. And that is how you continue to drive as a competitor, is that you don't forget those losses. And having 55 put on you just boils your blood, and you just can't wait for another opportunity to take that back and to say, that's actually not us. That was just a really bad Sunday for us. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap me up for this episode. I can't thank you enough. If you made it this far, you're a freaking champion. Again, I wanted to say, would love to be able to invite you guys to watch via stream of our baptism next Sunday, probably around noon. If you guys are able to, of course, I'd absolutely love it. I really appreciate it, and God bless you for doing so, for taking time out to not only watch this show, but to do that as well. Means a lot to me. But I really love everybody that watches this show, and everyone who really contributes, if in our Discord or the Colonel and everybody. Like, it really means a lot to me that you guys are there and are responsive and talk and everything. So if you're able to watch, absolutely would love it. And I appreciate your time as always, guys. But we'll see you again, possibly on Wednesday, if we're able to get a guest in here that we could feel really good about. Possibly just me alone, but we'll see how that comes down the line. But most likely, watch out for next Sunday. And then tonight, we're going to be streaming with Red Zone in the Lab on the draft show, highlighting specifically corners. In the show, it should be starting around 8:15, 8:30. So check them out on YouTube, Red Zone in the Lab. And always, you can find me on Twitter. You can find our show, The Burgundy Zone, on Instagram. On Twitter, my name is The Podfather, or The Burgundy Zone. You could type in, that's where you could find me on there. If you want to submit a question, if you want to be a guest on this show, Goody reached out. I tried to reach out today. That's my fault. I reached out way too freaking late. But would love to be able to have anybody on here. Just reach out to us and let us know that you want to be on the show, and love to be able to hear your thoughts on the football team, of course. All right, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.